In the dim glow of my phone screen, late at night, I watched the tiny dot pulse on the map. My stolen AirPods, alive and moving, carried by a thief who had no idea I was hunting them from afar. With one tap, I could shatter their eardrums. And I did. Again and again. It all started 6 months ago during a grueling layover in Houston. The flight had been turbulent, my mind foggy from hours in the air, and as I shuffled off the plane, I patted my pockets absent-mindedly. Wallet, phone, keys, all there. But something felt off. It wasn't until I'd navigated the crowded terminal, endured the endless security line with its beeping scanners and impatient travelers, that the panic hit me like a cold wave. My AirPods were gone. They must have slipped out during the flight, tumbling silently from my pocket onto the seat or floor. Heart racing, I spun around, scanning the gate area as if they might magically appear. But the plane was already being prepped for the next leg, cleaners swarming aboard like shadows in the dim cabin light. I cursed under my breath, my stomach twisting with that sinking dread of loss. These weren't just any headphones. They were my lifeline for long trips, wrapped in a distinctive silicone case that I'd chosen for its bright, unmistakable hue. Without wasting another second, I pulled up the United Airlines app and filed a lost item claim right there in the terminal. I poured in every detail, the flight number, my seat, 12A, aisle side, the exact description of the case, even the faint scratch on one bud from a previous drop. "Please," I typed in the notes, "these mean a lot to me." To be thorough, I activated Lost Mode on my Find My app, locking them down and displaying my phone number with a desperate message. "Reward if found, call me anytime." I imagined some honest soul spotting them under a seat, dialing me up and turning a bad day around. But as I boarded my connecting flight, a nagging doubt crept in. What if it wasn't an accident? What if someone had seen them and decided to keep them? The next few hours were agony. I kept refreshing the app, my eyes glued to the screen during takeoff and landing. At first, nothing. Just the last known location at the gate in Houston. But then, a blip. They moved. Not far, just deeper into the airport. I zoomed in, my pulse quickening. It looked like they were heading toward what I assumed was the United Lost and Found office. Relief washed over me. Okay, I thought, someone turned them in. This is fixable. I fired off an email to United's customer service, reiterating the claim and mentioning the movement. "I can see they're still on airport property," I wrote, trying to sound calm but urgent. "Please check your office space." But as the day wore on, doubt festered. Why no call? Why hadn't they updated the claim? I emailed again, then again, each message more insistent. And then, about 24 hours later, the map shifted dramatically. The dot leaped from the airport to a residential area, a cluster of apartment buildings on the outskirts of the city. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't lost and found. This was theft. Someone had pocketed them, taken them home. I stared at the screen, a chill running down my spine. Who? A passenger? No, the timing didn't fit. It had to be someone with access after deplaning, like one of those cleaners I'd glimpsed boarding the plane. Over the next few days, I became obsessed, tracking their every move like a digital ghost. The AirPods pinged back to the airport in the mornings, lingered there during what seemed like shift hours, then returned to the same apartment complex in the evenings. Patterns emerged, weekdays from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the airport, weekends off. It was a schedule, clear as day. My mind raced with scenarios, picturing this faceless thief slipping the buds into their ears, oblivious to the tracking, enjoying my music while I seethed from hundreds of miles away in Arizona. Gathering my evidence, I compiled everything: screenshots of the locations, timestamps, even the address of the apartment building pulled from reverse mapping. Surely this was enough. I emailed United once more, laying it all out. "The device is moving with an employee's schedule," I explained. "Here's the home address and their apparent workdays. You can identify them internally and handle this." I held my breath, imagining security pulling the thief aside, recovering my AirPods, maybe even firing them. Justice served quietly. But the response crushed me. United's reply was cold, bureaucratic. "Since the item has left airport property, we cannot intervene. Please file a police report with the Houston Police Department." They closed the claim, just like that. I reread it, fury building. I lived in Arizona. How was I supposed to march into a Houston precinct and explain this? Demand they raid an apartment over headphones? It felt hopeless, the system rigged against me. The thief had won, or so it seemed. Check employee lockers. Review security. Check employee lockers. Review security footage. Question the cleaners who boarded right after we deplaned. Instead, they washed their hands of it. "File a police report," they said, as if I could drop everything, fly to Houston, and convince a detective that $150 earbuds warranted an investigation. The thought made me laugh bitterly in the quiet of my Arizona apartment. No, that wasn't happening. But the Find My app stayed open on my phone like an open wound. Every few hours I'd check it instinctively. There they were, my AirPods, still alive, still moving. The thief wasn't just keeping them, they were using them. I could see when the case opened, when one bud separated and went into an ear. The map showed the tiny journeys, from the apartment to the airport gate area, lingering near planes being cleaned, then back again at the end of the shift. Each ping felt like a taunt. They were listening to music, podcasts, calls, maybe even my old playlists if they hadn't reset them yet, while I sat here, powerless. Then one evening, staring at the dots stationary in that apartment complex, an idea sparked. Petty, yes. Vindictive, absolutely. But satisfying in a way the Airline never could be. I opened the Find My controls. The play sound feature glowed there, innocent looking. Designed to help owners locate lost items under couch cushions. But in the hands of someone wronged? A weapon. I waited until the next morning. The dot moved back to the airport, right on schedule. I imagined the cleaner, maybe in their Navy uniform, pushing a cart down the narrow aisle of a just-landed plane, slipping one bud in to drown out the cabin noise. My thumb hovered over the button. Heart pounding, I pressed it. Somewhere in Houston, a piercing, high-pitched chime erupted directly into their ear canal. Not a gentle notification, a full-volume assault designed to cut through walls, through sleep, through anything. I pictured them flinching, yanking the bud out, looking around in confusion as colleagues glanced over. Did their ears ring? Did they curse under their breath? I didn't know. But the map told me everything. Within seconds, the earbud rejoined the case. The sound had worked. They'd panicked. A slow, wicked smile spread across my face. This was control. This was payback without ever leaving my couch. I didn't stop there. It became a routine, a quiet ritual of vengeance. Whenever I saw both earbuds out of the case, maybe during a break, maybe at home watching TV, I'd wait just long enough for them to settle in. Then, play sound. The dot would jerk, the buds snap back into the case almost immediately. Sometimes I'd do it twice in a row, imagining the confusion turning to frustration. Once, I caught them mid-commute. The buds separated on the drive to work. I hit play right as they merged onto the highway. The map showed a sudden swerve, then the case closing fast. I laughed out loud in my empty living room. Months passed. The pattern never changed. They still used them, still commuted, still worked those early shifts. But every time those buds came out for more than a minute or two, I was there, watching, waiting, striking. I never contacted them directly. No messages, no threats. Just the relentless chime, a ghost in their ears. I wondered if they suspected tracking. Maybe they thought it was a glitch or a faulty battery. Maybe they'd even considered returning them, but were too deep in denial. Or maybe they were stubborn, refusing to give up the prize. Deep down, a small voice reminded me of the alternative. If they'd called the number in lost mode, I would have paid a finder's fee, enough for a decent pair of knockoffs, maybe more. I understood temptation. Airport wages aren't generous, and AirPods feel like luxury. But they chose silence. They chose to keep what wasn't theirs. So now they lived with the consequence. Random, ear-splitting interruptions that arrived without warning, without mercy. I told myself it was justice, a lesson. If I could make their stolen luxury painful enough, maybe they'd think twice before pocketing the next passenger's things. Maybe I was slowly chipping away at their hearing, one blast at a time. Was it cruel? Probably. Was it the pettiest thing I'd ever done? Without question. And yet, every time that dot lit up on my screen, every time I saw the buds separate, my finger found the button almost automatically. The hunt wasn't over. Not yet. The months stretched on, each one marked by those silent, invisible battles playing out across state lines. I never saw the thief's face, never heard their voice, yet I felt like I knew them intimately. Their routine became mine. The early alarm that sent the dot racing toward the airport, the long hours near the gates where planes disgorged tired passengers, the evening retreat to that same nondescript apartment building. I could almost picture the small rituals, unlocking the door, kicking off shoes, fishing the case out of a pocket or bag, popping an earbud in to unwind after a day of scrubbing trays and wiping armrests. And every time those buds separated for too long, I struck. It wasn't random anymore. It was strategic. I learned their weak spots. Late-night Netflix sessions when the case sat open on a coffee table? Perfect. Mid-morning breaks at work when they'd sneak a listen in the break room? Ideal. I'd wait until the map showed both buds stationary and separated, then hit play sound. The reaction was always the same. A frantic scramble on the map, the buds slamming back into the case within 5 seconds. Sometimes I'd follow up with a second blast 30 seconds later, just to drive the point home. I imagined the growing paranoia, checking the case obsessively, wondering if the buds were defective, maybe even Googling AirPods randomly beeping loudly. Did they blame Apple? The battery? Or, finally, did a seed of guilt take root? I kept telling myself I'd stop soon, once they suffered enough, once the pettiness burned itself out. But each time the notification popped up, earbuds separated, my thumb moved on autopilot. It became almost meditative, a small act of reclaiming power in a world that had let me down. United had closed the door, The police were a non-starter. This was all I had left. One night, around the 4-month mark, something shifted. I opened the app late, expecting the usual evening pattern. The dot was at the apartment, but the case was closed. No movement for hours. I refreshed. Still closed. A strange unease settled in. Had they finally figured it out? Disabled tracking somehow? Sold them? Thrown them away? I stared at the frozen location, the silence louder than any chime I'd ever sent. Then, at 2:17 a.m. my time, the case opened. Both buds separated almost immediately. My pulse quickened. This was unusual. Middle of the night, no commute, no obvious reason to use them. I waited, watching the map like a hawk. 5 minutes passed. 10. They were still out, still separated. I could almost feel the moment. The thief lying in bed, earbuds in, scrolling on their phone, music low, thinking the night was peaceful. I pressed play sound. The map reacted instantly. Buds jerked, case snapped shut. But then, 30 seconds later, the case opened again. Buds separated once more. Deliberate. Defiant. My breath caught. They were testing me. I hit play sound again. Same reaction. Quick retreat into the case. Then, again, the case reopened. Buds out, stationary, challenging. A cold thrill ran through me. This wasn't ignorance anymore. This was acknowledgement. They knew someone was watching. They knew the blasts weren't random. And instead of stopping, they were daring me to keep going. I leaned forward, phone gripped tight. Fine. If this was a game now, I'd play. I waited exactly 1 minute, then fired another sound. The buds dove back in. 30 seconds later, open again. I answered with 2 quick blasts in succession. Case shut, opened. Shut, opened. We went back and forth like that for nearly 20 minutes, a silent war of persistence. Each time they put the buds back in their ears, I punished them. Each time they dared to take them out again, I reminded them I was still there. Finally, at 2:41 a.m., the case stayed closed. No more movement. They'd given up, for the night at least. I sat back, adrenaline buzzing, a strange mix of triumph and exhaustion washing over me. They knew now. They knew I could reach them anytime, anywhere. And yet, they hadn't gotten rid of the AirPods. Greed? Stubbornness? Or something darker? Some twisted enjoyment of the cat and mouse? I didn't know. But one thing was clear. The petty revenge had evolved. It wasn't just about making them flinch anymore. It was about making sure they never felt safe using what they stole. Every chime was a whisper in their ear. You're not invisible. You're not untouchable. And I wasn't done yet. I still check the map most days. The pattern continues. Airport by day, apartment by night. The buds still come out. I still press the button. Maybe one day they'll call the number I left in lost mode. Maybe they'll mail them back anonymously. Or maybe they'll just keep enduring the random torture until the batteries die or the hearing fades. Either way, the lesson is sinking in, one piercing note at a time.